Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Greetings, friends around the world. I see you have found your way to the Dark Outpost, an excursion to the darkest outposts of the human mind and beyond. Welcome, travelers. I'm David Zublick.
And I'm Penny Shepard, and today's guest is our Great Awake Nation associate producer, Heather Day, and her segment is called The Day Shift. Here we go.
Welcome to The Day Shift with Heather Day, author of AI 2030. Heather is pontificator of all things scientific, possible and impossible, plausible and incredulous.
We're all riding on this train of life. We're all riding on this train of life. Well, we can't escape, so we might as well try. We're all stuck, so we might as well give it up. Give it up, we're gonna make it good. Oh, 'cause we're all riding on the train of life. Oh, without you, babe, I don't know where I'd be. Without you, babe, I don't know where I'd be. Well, I know one thing, I wanna be happy. I know one thing, I wanna be happy.
The Day Shift with Heather Day begins now.
And here she is, the light in everyone's day, Heather Day. If you don't know the science behind what they're doing, and everyone who's taken even a rudimentary science class knows about RNA and DNA. If you don't know what's happening, you're not going to be able to understand what they're doing to you. It's
Right. And that's not informed consent, right? So when you open JALView, this is just an example sequence alignment that it preloads. Here is, you see all these colors. This is how you can select how much it matches. And you see
Sure.
down here, these thick yellow parts are where it really, really matches. And then the blank spots are where it doesn't match. These rows are all different organisms. And then you have, this is the predicted protein model here, okay? That they are doing in 3D. And this is the phylogenetic tree. And that phylogenetic tree is based on the theory of evolution. They're saying, here's all these, here's where these two evolved from this one, which later also branched into these, and they came from here. And this is kind of all based on evolution. So if evolution weren't correct, then then everything they're doing is incorrect. This right here is a logo. So do you see how it has these letters and some are big and some are small? Those letters are amino acids, okay? So this is how they compare sequences, and then they put it into a database. And then when they go to create a messenger RNA, they're basing it on everything that's been calculated based on probability. So when I say probability, they're using different algorithms, okay? And so these are these basic algorithms. There's PAM and BLOSSOM, and essentially PAM is point mutation and BLOSSOM stands for something else. I don't remember, but you can pick. I can go through and I can use these tools and I can compare the sequences and get those outputs that I just showed you. And I actually did a comparison of the spike protein and the reverse transcriptase human telomerase gene that I can kind of show you here at the end. And so basically, these are just the different algorithms, and they're all based on different processes of probabilities. So, BLOSSOM is a matrix of comparisons of sequences with an identity of no more than 62%. That means they don't match more than 62%. PAM, each subunit is a divergence of a certain percent of identity. And I don't want to get into all the super details, but here is reverse transcriptase on a very popular website, which is here. And you can see like their prediction. And then over here, the dark part, I don't know how well you can see it. Yeah, the dark part is where it's probably more correct. And you can see the score residue, right? Expected error. This is probably incorrect. And it's all based on that reverse transcriptase PCR. And you can see here the model confidence, very high, low, very low. So remember, if they're going to create a messenger RNA drug based on a sequence that has some of the molecule they're confident about, but some of it they're not. And they're going to put it into your body to make this protein, but they don't really know what the protein's really going to do in your body. Like throw it. Okay. So that's what's
I don't know what's worse, if they knew what's going to happen to you, so that maybe at some point, if they could be forced to tell you what it is they did to you, or if they don't know what it's going to do to you. Well, it's just an experiment.
Exactly. So I'm going to show you a couple more tools and then what I think is the result. So this is a website called Uniprot, and you guys watching can go and experiment yourself because this is a free for all, right? So you can type in at the top whatever gene you want to search. I typed in telomerase reverse transcriptase because it's in my book and it is a human gene. And I hypothesized in my book that because of that gene, we can integrate the DNA, the RNA into our DNA. And therefore we could end up making lots of spike proteins, because what they'll tell you is that when they inject you, your body quickly degrades the RNA. And so it doesn't hurt and you just make a few spike proteins. But in reality, my hypothesis is it goes into your DNA and it just keeps making spike proteins. And then, of course, Luc Montagnier, the Nobel Prize winning virologist, the other lady you mentioned, the reason they're saying everyone's going to die in 3 to 5 years is because they're saying that these proteins are going to be created in the blood and be created in the tissues, which is basically cancer and the horrifying rubbery clots, right? So this is kind of what scientists are working with. You've got the gene, it has this like ID code. It shows you the structure of the reverse transcriptase gene. These are domains. So like this part of the sequence has this particular function, and then you can do the sequence. And I can come up here and I can blast and I can compare that sequence to another sequence. So this is SARS-CoV-2. And these are the domains of SARS-CoV-2. So they've got the big long sequence, but this particular part of the sequence has this function and a different one has a different function. And they've kind of figured all that out. So I aligned these sequences. Now, this is sloppy because I'm supposed to like cut off the beginning of one based on known genes, which there's another website and tool to do that. I just aligned the entire reverse transcriptase to the spike, and then I did an alignment with the entire reverse transcriptase to the entire SARS-CoV-2, okay? Because I want to see if SARS-CoV-2 or spike has reverse transcriptase in it, because I know it's in us. And I don't know, it was just to show you the process. This isn't exactly very scientific because it's sloppy. Okay. I'm supposed to be cutting pieces and comparing very specific domains, but for the purpose of showing you. So this, if you look here, you've got one sequence and another sequence. Well, you can see the human one's not matching up, and then you kind of go down and you see here you've got dots, asterisks, and colons. The asterisk is where they match amino acids. The colon is where they match the output. And then the dot is where it's a similar, but not as similar. And so they actually can go ahead and give you a percent identity matrix. And they're saying that there's about a 20% similarity between these two. And when you look at the text output, you can see where exactly in the sequence that similarity is. Now, 20% is very low. It does not mean that SARS-CoV-2 is from humans or whatever. I was just doing this to show you. This is not super scientific, okay? So this is the spike, and you can see at the very beginning of the sequence for the spike, you see more similarities to reverse transcriptase here. And again, it gives you about 20%. Now, what's going to happen if I cut the sequence of the human one to fit the spike one, and then I go and find known domains and do the correct type of alignment? If it gets to 50% or higher, that can actually show something significant. So but what is that really showing? According to them, it's showing that SARS-CoV-2 could be related to reverse transcriptase, or it can have. But if it has reverse transcriptase in it, it can go into us. That's if our gene doesn't already absorb it. So does our gene already absorb it? Well, if you go back to this reverse transcriptase thing and you look right here, you can see that it's in the cytoplasm. Oh, let me put it back up. So this gene occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell. So their whole argument, and I debated with these scientists a lot on TikTok, like PhD scientists, their argument was that the mRNA can't cross this nuclear pore to get into the nucleus where the DNA is. They said that it was impossible because the nuclear pore doesn't let everything in. Well, through electroporation, that actually opens up these little pathways, number one. Number two, the purpose of the reverse transcriptase gene is to carry things from the cytoplasm into the DNA. And right here, you can see that it is in the cytoplasm. That's how reverse transcriptase on the telomerase genes, that's how it protects our telomeres, because it can go in. So if spike protein has it in there, or if we have it and pick up the spike protein to bring it into our cell, which is normal because that's what CRISPR is based on. CRISPR is based on the fact that we absorb stuff. Our DNA is 10% viruses because we absorb stuff. So obviously it's happening. I'm just showing you exactly like how it could happen. So if that happens and it's in the DNA and it doesn't get digested quickly, then what's going to happen as a result? Like this. And so, this is what was horrifying me in
the clot monster.
When AI takes over, like AI, I hope that you understand when I showed you all these tools and databases, how AI has already taken hold, and these algorithms, it's an early form of AI. But as AI becomes more involved, what's going to happen next? And that's where, we go into dragons, right?
And John Dies in the End, which I think everyone should watch that. It's about the black goo being injected. It's about, all of the things that we talk about. And there's a meat monster, okay? The meat comes out of the freezer and it assembles itself. And then it asks to talk to Marconi, which that's a character in there. And as you know, that's an actual real person, a real historical person. And, Marconi over the telephone dissolves this meat monster that's speaking through meat that assembled itself. It came out of the freezer, assembled itself into this meat monster. And that's a movie I recommend that everyone watch that. Also, the 12 Monkeys.
John Dies in the End is the name
John
of it?
Dies in the End. I've watched it like 17 times.
You must really like that movie.
Well, I watched it because in there, they go to another dimension in time, and they go to a church. The characters' names are David and John. And when David and John go to the new dimension, their photographs, their depictions are hanging in a church, and they're being worshipped in the church. And so the reason why I've watched it several times is because my brother John's picture I found in a church wearing a COVID mask. And then it was also, his depiction was also in another life-size rendering in a church, was called Willow Creek Church, which now that I think about that name, it's very creepy. Bill Hybels had to step down due to allegations of sexual impropriety within the church. The entire elder board stepped down. But that one life-size rendering has another depiction of, it looks like my brother John in a COVID mask. I found it in 2017. And then when I took pictures of the pictures, because my mother was an artist and I see things in the pictures. And when I took the color out of it, it was an alien gray that was in the middle. And then on this side, everything disappeared. And it was another alien gray looking at that alien gray. And this life-size rendering, I don't know if it's still there because Bill Hybels stepped down, but was in the prayer and worship room. So thus, that when I was watching John Dies in the End, and John and David are talking to one another, and they both are injected with the black goo. And at one point, John tells David to go and take the $5 that are in his pocket. He's like, how do you know I have $5 in my pocket? How are you watching me? And he tells him to go buy a hot dog, which that's the Oscar Mayer wiener. And that's the Meyer family, which is actually my family, or the Myers as well. And then he says, how are you talking to me? Because I'm not getting any self-service. And he says, go buy this hot dog. He buys a hot dog. He says, now put it up to your ear. And he puts the hot dog up to his ear and he goes, oh, I get it. Okay. You're talking to me like from another dimension. I don't need Wi-Fi, but he still puts the hot dog up to his ear next time he wants to talk about it, which that's another form of mind control. So
it sounds like the meat with the quantum dust too. And so, because in my book, the dragons are an ancient alien race, right? That are some of our, they're kind of like our ancestors too, because they came here, they were like destroying other places, they were outcast, and some of them came here and they started doing genetic experiments. They created us early humans, and then essentially some of them stayed behind and other ones left, and the ones that stayed behind devolved. They lost their wings, they lost their ability, and the wings gave them the ability to travel between dimensions. Like, angels depicted with wings is really their ability to pop in and out of our dimension and appear before us, right? So that's what the dragon wings in my book represent. And the goal is, like, I don't want to totally spoil it, but part of the goal of possessing the humans through the quantum dust, which is like the black goo part, and they sent it like on a meteor to get here so that we would accidentally ingest it. And then later they create like a scientific version to carry all these gene transfections in. Remember when I said a few minutes ago, the nanolipid particle, the magnet part has to do with, that's the black goo part that allows it to get into our genes and change us, right? So they end up possessing these scientists to do these experiments. So essentially these scientists are possessed sorcerers that are possessed through this black goo from an ancient dragon alien race, but not all dragons are bad, right? True. And they're trying to do these experiments to perfect this technology so they can, but they need the black goo because it is a literal microprocessor that allows the AI to function. It allows the quantum processing, because old-fashioned chips were like this big and then they got smaller and smaller. And then the M1 chip from Apple came out, which the M1 chip is essentially graphene oxide. Right. And it's each little individual carbon is a little transistor, and the more transistors you have, the faster you can process. So the whole black goo in my book, I call it quantum dust, is how they run the AI quantum grid. And because remember, over and over, I've said to you guys, the secret to AI is the data set, right? Once you have all the data, then you just have to organize, categorize the data, and spit out a prediction. Okay, that's it. It's really kind of overrated. Without all the data, And without the processing, AI would be nothing. That's why they have to scan our faces and sequence our DNA and know every protein sequence and all, because the data is the main power of the AI. It has to infest everything. It has to get access to all the sequences. And then it has to have something like graphene oxide to process and spit out the prediction. The problem in the horror is these humans are taking these predictions like God, which would be ironic if it came from outer space and, like, you know, because it would be like a satanic God, right? And they're going to try to create things with it. So what if it was like a satanic God that was possessing them to literally,
in the X-Files, the black goo, and if you watch the X-Files movie, is described as a sentient being that walked the earth before the dinosaurs. And then also, you might, for our audience, you might also take a look at the movie Venom, in which then the individual gets possessed by the black goo, and it tells him things to do, but it also gives him extraordinary superpowers. So that would be another controlling factor as to why, you know, if it came from another planet, that it would be desirable for them.
So what are they going to do? They're going to upload their consciousness onto the quantum dust. That's what gives it the consciousness. So in my book, I'm kind of explaining the origins of the consciousness of the black goo, because they know it's coming. They know they're going to be banished because they destroy everything. They're like parasitic. And so they upload their consciousness and they send a meteor to the earth so that
I think that's also in Prometheus too, by Ridley Scott. Number one, how can people actually contribute to your research and help you? You
that's
have
very
a
important.
GoFundMe, and how can they get your book?
Yeah, so I updated my Cash App. It's just Heather Day Music Cash App. They can donate anytime. I'd love to send, if they donate 40 or 50, I'd love to send them a signed copy of my book. So just put your name and address in there, and I'll send you a signed copy of my book.
That's pretty awesome.
But one more comment. The reason this is a common story is because this is all in the Sumerian clay tablets, which are also in my acknowledgement. I'm just kind of putting a biblical perspective on it.
That's fantastic.
And then also, if people want to see you, they can also see you on the Awake Nation, your associate producer, as well as the head of the trauma triage team, which is every Monday. And that's from 10 to 11 Central, 11 to 12 noon Eastern.
Yeah. So
Heather, you are an amazing researcher, and obviously she's a scientist.
Yeah.
Which I bow down to scientists. Good scientist.
Well, unpaid scientist, but so is Tesla.
Yeah, well, maybe that'll take. You know what you should do on the Awake Nation is put yourself out there and tell people what you'd like to do. And even somebody watching this, I mean, what would you like to do?
I wanted to compare these sequences because I had a feeling that the sequence had something fishy in it, but we already kind of have that information now. So I just want to write more good science fiction to warn the world of potential apocalypses, prevent stuff.
Well, keep doing what you're doing, because it's really great. The book AI 2030 is available. As she said, signed copy, donations. You can get it on Amazon. We have it. We've read it. We love it. You will too. And we'll see you again next Monday on the Awake Nation. So, Heather Day, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Wow.
I know.
These little creepy crawly things that may be coming out of my nose. Just, or dragonflies. Could be that too.
Dragonflies.
Could be dragonflies. May the bird of paradise fly up your nose. May the bird of dragonflies fly up your nose.
Can you imagine if they genetically altered a dragonfly so it was like 5,000 feet tall?
I would love to be able to breathe fire.
Me too.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
Somebody says something either. Of course, I do every time I eat Taco Bell. But
yeah, I do stay away from the.
Sorry, that's usually coming out the other end.
Yes, I do stay away from those kind of foods that are fire breathing.
I know. Well, anyway, it's going to do it for this edition of the Dark Outpost, and we invite you to watch our regular weekday show featuring Heather Day on Monday. She's the associate producer, so she's always behind the scenes, but she appears on Monday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to noon Eastern, 6 to 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll be back, of course, tomorrow to do it all over again. In the meantime, thanks for watching the Dark Outpost. We are out of time, so we are out of here. Zublick out.
Shepard out. Bye.